Hello.
I need to adjust again. I keep doing this where I meet with people and like your face is framed in the center and I'm just like, here's my body. Hold on. There.
Yay.
Excellent. It is good to see you, friend.
Yeah, it's good seeing you too. I keep feeling
How's
like
everybody joining? Hello, Catherine, who I just saw join. You might have heard of her before, Inika. Just, maybe.
vaguely.
Yeah. Goodness, it's been like over a year since we went live together because I was living at the bus at the time. Do you remember?
Ah,
Yeah.
has been that long.
Yeah, right? Like that was 2021.
That was ages ago.
I know, right? Was that even like
Fun.
in a decade? I don't know. I'm just gonna turn up the volume a little bit. Hi, folks. Thanks for joining. Thank you for joining. Um, yeah, cool. And what we saw each other in February, which already seems like a year ago.
Yeah, it does.
Oh goodness. So I, 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 I would like to think that my people know who you are, but in the event that they do not, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Enika. I'm a fan of all things Savannah, Georgia, and spooky. I'm originally from the Florida Panhandle, but I moved here in 2010, and Savannah can't get rid of me.
That's how I feel about Wilmington. I'm just like, I moved here because is the best way to define that. Because at the time I was just like, I don't know, I think I'll just move here. And I just keep coming back. Even when pandemic was like, you can't afford rent, I was like, bet, give me a few months. So cool. Okay, and remind me, how long have you officially been a tour guide and had a company in Savannah?
So officially, it's been a year and a half. Yeah, like a year and a half. But during the 2020 shutdown, downloaded TikTok out of boredom, just like everybody else. And because everything was closed, I would walk around downtown and show people what Savannah looked like, so that once things started opening up, they could be like, oh, yeah, maybe I should check out Savannah. And started sharing some ghost stories along the way. Actually reached out to you because you inspired me to start sharing the ghost stories. So thanks, Ghost Mom. Uh,
I remember that because you were so considerate. You're like, I like your videos. I'd like to do this in Savannah. And like the fact that you asked, like anybody could do that. Anybody could be like, oh, I like what you're doing. I want to talk about my city and like not say anything about it. I remember I was so moved by that because I was just like, yeah, you should. Like, I love Savannah. I want to know about Savannah.
well, like there's there's so many creative people on TikTok and we all have these great ideas, but I always want to go the extra mile to like make sure everybody's okay if I do something even remotely similar to somebody else because I don't want them to ever feel like I'm trying to encroach on anything that they're doing. So, yeah.
Well, all the same, it is appreciated. I'm just glad that you reached out so I could like look at your content because I was so curious after that.
And here we are, friends.
And here we are. We've met in real life. It's wild. I also wanted to give a shout out because I know some people who have followed me have since gone on your tour, and I was so excited when like you shared that with me. I was like, good, they should. I keep telling people to go on your tour.
And it was really fun because that was after you and Catherine had visited. And so I was able to fill some of these people in on stuff that they had seen on your YouTube or TikTok or, on Patreon. And so it just added like this whole nother level to the experience.
The fans. Or how both Catherine and I picked up on who we lovingly called Colonel Sanders, who is not Colonel Sanders, but yeah, us being in this square, we went on a whole thing. Like it's on YouTube. The Patreon got the full cut of us just being like, "Is it this? Is it that?" And then we're like, "All right, Enika, what?" And you were like, "I don't know who that is." Oh goodness. Well, if anything, I appreciated that night. You were like, you know, the trajectory makes sense, the time period makes sense, he makes sense. Never heard of him.
Yeah. I refer to him as Mr. Hot Stuff because he always shows up very warm. Uh, and I also, like on my tours, feel like that's a way to diffuse things because as I'm telling this story, like it sounds really scary. So for people who have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm just going to give you the backstory.
Please.
Uh, so I had a bachelorette party who booked me for a ghost tour one night. And they were doing great. Like any bachelorette party, they were all drunk, but they were fun drunk. We were having a great time. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. And by the time they get to Chippewa Square with me, they have convinced themselves that a ghost is going to follow them back to their Airbnb. And so they are starting to near hysterics. And so we stopped by General Oglethorpe's monument. I'm trying to calm them down and let them know I'm not taking you anywhere where ghosts like to follow people. You're going to be okay. And as I'm trying to calm them down, I feel this warm presence walk through the center of our group. And I could very clearly pick up on it because it was a cool night and all of us were wearing sweaters. And I was looking at them like, did anyone else feel that? No, no one else picked up on this because I'm the only sober one. So I was the only one who picked up on it. So I was like, okay, we're just going to walk away from here. I did not tell them why, because again, trying to keep them calm. Uh, and then later, like months later, I had two different groups who also picked up on a warm presence in that square. And so I was like, okay, that's three of us then. So what is going on? And then you and Catherine showed up.
And the rest is history. Yeah, then we showed up. Catherine and I say this disclaimer in the YouTube video. We were exhausted. We had just come back from a Patreon event, which technically was the first real time like we met you. And that was in St. Augustine. Had we slept the entire time? Maybe. But we rolled into Savannah and we were like punch drunk the entire time because we were just like, they're ghosts. And I need coffee, but they're a ghost. Like so we get in and we try to trail this spirit, and I guess Catherine was hot on the hunt on this one because she was just like, there is a man. And just kind of started from there. I picked up on the trail. We were both confirming different things for each other on that, like describing things and that kind of thing. And like we built this entire narrative. We were like, dude, do you want to come out? Do you want to talk? Clearly you've been around. You like walk out here. Like we're doing this whole thing. And it all builds up into something, and we're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then we're like, so, and you're like, cool. Yes, Paige, ghost, but first coffee is correct. I had had so much coffee throughout that trip because we were doing like late night paranormal investigations and then early morning breakfast, which, you know, was lovely. And all the while, like, I was just like, I could sleep on a tree, in a tree, next to a tree, on a bench. There are some photos of me falling asleep on a tree. It's fine. It's a very good tree. It's very good tree. Um, so cool. Let's see, kind of what to get into.
I do have a question
Please.
from somebody who follows me, patron. Uh, are ghosts warm in the winter and cold in the summer?
I love that idea. I love that idea of a ghost that is like, I am going to regulate my body temperature or my energetic temperature, um, like a bird. Did you know that? Do you know how birds regulate their temperature in the winter?
No.
Okay, fun facts. I learned this. And we'll get back to the topic at hand. So, birds, when you see them in the winter, oftentimes they look really puffy, as if they had eaten a lot of food. In reality, they haven't eaten more food, like maybe a little bit to like preserve themselves, but what they do is they puff up their feathers to allow their body heat to stay closer to their body. And in the summer, they hold them down so their body heat releases.
Oh.
That's why winter birds are just, it's like winter bears. Winter birds, winter bears, everybody's big. And it's beautiful. And
Now
it's
I just
warm.
have this mental image of like puffy ghosts.
Off you go. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, I have an answer, like an actual answer that doesn't have to do with birds, but I do love the concept of puffy ghosts. But do you know why spirits change temperature?
I don't actually.
Okay, uh, I feel like I've been called in. Okay, so how exciting! I have found spirits have different temperature based upon a variety of factors. I used to think that a cold ghost was a sad ghost, or a cold ghost was a confused ghost, or a trapped ghost, or something like that. And then a lot of that changed when I met Rupert because Rupert is just warm in general. It's really great for me because I am cold in general, so like having him around, I'm just like perfect. He's my puffy ghost, if you will. He looked up on that one. He was just like, "Excuse me." um, so yeah. Anywho, he runs warm, and he always has, even when he was going through the fog, even when he was like super confused. Um, so I think the concept of a ghost temperature could be a kind of where they resonate. Like, are they closer to our plane? Are they kind of here, kind of there? Um, are they feeling slower or are they sad? I do think the temperature could be connected to the mental state of a spirit or the physical plane of a spirit of like where they are.
Hmm.
Um, can it change over time? Absolutely. I've also met spirits that like they feel kind of numb. Jimothy, for example, when we've sounds weird to be like when we've touched, he has different like points where like he's touched my arm and that kind of thing. He kind of has a numbing feel to him. I've met other spirits that are in very sound mind that have prickly feelings or cold or warm or kind of like a swelling feeling where it's like they walk in the room and you feel smaller just because they take up a lot of energy or a lot of room. Um, all of that to say, do ghosts get cold in the summer and warm in the winter? If they are aware of themselves to do that enough, I will say yes. The typical ghost, probably not. They probably run the same temperature, generally speaking, or they run the same frequency, generally speaking, or the same texture, generally speaking, unless they're actively working to change that about themselves. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay. I feel like I was like, here's a book on the subject that could have been answered in like 2 sentences. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'll look at the clock next time. Somebody asked on mine if you're allowed to ask questions. Yeah, I'm totally open to that. I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Um, this words. See, we're in like the shadow phase of Mercury retrograde, and I'm still just like words. Um, what would you say has been your scariest experience as a tour guide?
Uh, so my scariest experience didn't actually happen during the tour. It happened right after. And it was something that you warned me about before I started my tour. uh, because you have experience doing ghost tours and you would warn me like, hey, you're going around to a lot of places. The ghosts are going to get familiar with you. Some might try to test your boundaries. And I was like, okay, sure. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Uh, and one night I had left a group at a bar because that's where they wanted to end. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, I'm going to walk back to my car. I parked on the other side of the police station, which is right next to Colonial Park Cemetery, which I didn't get to take y'all to. So next time we need to
There
go
will be
there.
trust me, we were leaving, and I was like, I don't want to go yet. Like, I want to go get coffee again.
Yeah. Um, and so I'm walking down the sidewalk that takes you past Colonial Park Cemetery and past the police station. And I didn't feel unsafe doing that. It's a really popular spot for a lot of ghost tours to stop, and you'll usually see like a whole bunch of them posted up outside. And it's a very busy street, lots of people coming up and down. And I would say that I guess I just timed it just right because as I was walking down, there's no ghost tours out and the street is quiet. So I still didn't feel unsafe because it's still a pretty, well traveled area generally. And I continue walking down. As I'm walking down the sidewalk, I feel somebody behind me. And I moved to Savannah to work in news. I worked in broadcast news for a while. And listening to a lot of scanner traffic and knowing a lot of things, it tends to make you a little paranoid. So my first thought was, I'm about to get mugged. And I turn around to yell at whoever is following me, and there's no one there. And I was like, oh, that thing Rebekah said was going to happen has happened. Awesome. So I did the thing you said to do. I laid out my boundaries. I said, I don't know who you are. Don't care. But you cannot follow me home. You have to stay here. And I tried to look very brave while I was saying this. And then I turned around and kept walking the other way. And whoever it was listened, because they stayed put as I continued to walk away. Later on, I found out from one of my friends that in the 1980s, a guy had been shot and killed on that sidewalk because he had tried to rob someone, and he tried to rob the wrong person.
And then he tried to rob you, and you were like, not today, ghost. No.
Yes.
That is so similar to something that happened to me, and it was something that followed me home from the tour. This is before I was acknowledging my perception.
Mm.
Um, so I would consider myself, like at the time, people were like, "Are you a medium?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Don't ask me." So, but even still, like, it's one of those things that's like, you don't have to be a medium, a psychic, or etc. to just like be generally aware. And like the more you work with those in spirit, the more you pick up on stuff. Not always in a bad way, but just in general. And I was being followed home by somebody. It was a guy. I heard him whistling at me a few times. It was really trippy. And then like I was starting to hear footsteps behind me. It was like, pa, 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 pa. And I turned around and I didn't see anything. Um, was it the first time? It was the first time, yeah, because I kept turning around, and then like I walked forward another block, and then I heard it again, and that's when I grabbed my keys and I was about to turn around and like do a little not great things for the internet out there. But what do you do when you are walking alone on the street? Like I didn't know what to do. I was like, I have my keys. That is what I have. And I was ready, like I turned and I went, and then nothing was there. And all I heard, like it went around me, or he went around me, and it was just like, all I got was, so that's when I was like, oh God. Like, so basically I getting to the house, I kind of cleansed off beforehand. I set some barriers back, and then I popped back inside. But yeah, it's scary. Like, I don't know if that guy could have really done damage, but like all the same, I just figure it's better to be aware that these things can happen and that we can pick up on them rather than to think that they can't happen and then have them happen and like totally freak out. So I was the guinea pig, happy to bestow my knowledge upon you and other people who are listening.
I appreciate the heads up.
I get a question from Kenzie. How old were y'all when you felt comfortable in y'all's abilities, like confident? So I describe myself differently as far as my sensibilities. So how would you describe yourself? I mean, you've had paranormal experiences, but would you describe yourself on a spectrum of, I don't know, spiritual awareness, etc.? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. Well, as a kid, I definitely could perceive certain things. And I felt pretty confident in it until I was told that I was not supposed to be confident in that. Religious trauma. But honestly, when I felt comfortable in it was probably last year. Wait, no, 2 years ago. Yeah.
We mentioned the last like 2 years, or like
Yeah.
we're 2 years, 10, 5, 2 months.
Yeah.
What was the change for you to start kind of talking about it or acknowledging it at least?
Uh, well, not having a job helped.
I feel that
uh,
a lot, actually.
And, I was going to therapy and doing a lot of healing and just trying to figure out who I was again because, you know, working in the news business, it's this all consuming thing. You're never not working. And so when I didn't have that in my life anymore, I was like, well, how do I define myself? And having to take the steps to go back through my life and figure out what rang true for me ended me up here.
Yeah. So if someone were to say like, well, like, are you spiritually sensitive or another terminology, what would you use for yourself?
I say sensitive.
Yeah. That's so funny because the way that you describe yourself, it's very similar to me. Like a few years before, but like it was similar for me. So it's wild to me on my channel, and this is probably good that people keep finding this out. That means that you haven't been stalking my life. I appreciate that. Stay curious, friends. But otherwise, don't stalk me. So yeah, I was a professional producer, performer, playwright. You know this, for most of my life, certainly all of my professional life, and that is also a lot of go go go. I will say, in hearing your stories of working in the newsroom, um, I thought my life was stressful. I think you win. Thank you for the gift. Uh, so as far as stressful producing, congratulations. Here's an award. Um, but it was still that go go go. It's like once you get out of another show, you go into another, and like you never have guaranteed work. So it's like a lot of always preparing for more and more and more, and always networking, and always on the go, and always being something, looking some way, acting some way. And that's not to say that it's inauthentic or ingenuine, but it is a lot of go go go. 2020 happens, and all of my work dries up. I remember within 48 hours, I lost $6,000 worth in gigs that were going to pay my rent for the next while. Um, and that's just what it was, because it was like, the theaters aren't open. What can we do? So that happened, bought a bus, and then went on the road. Didn't get that far because, oh, Bethel, she didn't really want to go that far. So we parked her for months, and I had no work. I had never had a time, never, where I had nothing to do. It was always, I was either in school and then extracurricular activities, and then it was work, 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 work. So I had a lot of time with myself to do nothing, and it felt terrible. It was awful. I hated it so much, but it was necessary because there was so much of my life that needed to catch up to me. So much of the mental health prospect that I had been running from for decades at that point. And I finally settled with it. And I also finally noticed, in doing that, I started to lean further into my spiritual abilities, just acknowledging what was there. I started to look back on my life and be like, okay, well, what happened in this scenario? And it was actually in 2021 that I started making videos about ghost encounters. And I always gave it, like a huge grain of salt. I was like, nobody has to believe me. And still, nobody has to believe me. I'm not here to try to, shove anything down anybody's throats. It's all personal, what you believe. But yeah, with that, I was just like, well, looking back at this scenario, I felt like I met a guy in this, or there was this one story. I had run into a guy who was haunting an old convenience store that had been turned into a shop, a coffee shop. And I felt so validated because I got his name and I saw through my mind's eye his description. And then the next time that I was back there, I saw an article in the paper that had been pressed up in a frame, and it was him. And that was like the first thing that I was like, oh my God, it's like real or something. Like, there's no way I would have known that. But then I started making videos about George, and those really blew up. And I was just like, well, this is cool. I want more material. And I was like, do I talk about Rupert? That was kind of awkward. Like, that was happening at the time. But still, at the time, I was so, do I have abilities? Do I not have abilities? And I didn't want to call myself a medium or psychic or anything like that, because I felt like that had some kind of, I don't know, something attached to it. And I was like, I don't know if I'm one of those people. Like, I just want to be me. The label, you know. Um, but yeah, it was actually through writing down my experiences, both in the past, but also in the present, and acknowledging that more, that's how things just really, really grew. And I'm super thankful for everybody who was just like, hey, we love the stories that you tell when you say you're talking to ghosts. And I'm like, great, I'm gonna keep doing it. So it's all just sort of grown out of there, and all of it came down to me acknowledging things and just being like, all those what if scenarios in my past, I think they were real. So let's just go with it.
So that kind of feeds into a question that one of my followers asked. Oops, didn't mean to hit that button. What is the strangest place you've seen a ghost? So is the coffee shop the strangest place?
So, um, I would say meeting Molly was one of the more surprising spiritual encounters that I've ever had. Uh, Molly,
I love Molly.
she's great. She's off, like she's doing stuff now. People ask about her, and I'm just like, yo, she's living, living
Good for her.
somewhere. I can call her, but she just seems to be like in vacation travel mode. So I'm like, good for you, girl. Like,
Yeah.
we'll see each other again. Um, the strangest place to find a ghost. I thought of one of the saddest places I found a ghost, but we said strangest, so let's stick to that. I know I found some things. Uh, it's usually when a ghost is like, this is a good story. This is a great story. Catherine was actually there by chance. That was like maybe the first night that I met her in person. She came to Wilmington. This was 2021. Yeah, okay. 2021. I ask the nothing that's there. Like it's not like I can look up. River doesn't know. I guess he could, but whatever. So we were at Waffle House. I made a skit about this. I was with my partner at the time, Catherine, um, Rupert, and Jimothy, and we were just talking about some things that had just happened at the Railroad Museum. And we're talking with the wait staff and stuff, and I look over and I get the sense there's a guy that was just stuck in the middle of a table. Like he's a ghost. He's stuck in the middle of a table at a Waffle House in downtown Wilmington at like 11:30 in the night, you know? And I was just like, oh no, I think he got lost. Like I think he got stuck. And so I was like, guys, can you go over and help him? And so Timothy and Rupert, they have very different ways of helping somebody. Rupert's trying to offer, logic to this man, which he's not really quite doing. Like the man's kind of like not there. And then Jimothy just starts poking at the guy, and they're just like two different, very different ways of doing this. And eventually the guy just walked away. He didn't say anything, not that I saw, or not that I picked up on, but yeah, he just walked away through a wall.
I guess that worked.
Yeah, together their actions did it. But I think that's probably the strangest. A spirit stuck in a table at a Waffle House. So, do you have an experience with that?
Last summer, I was on vacation with some of my family, and one of my little relatives came up to me and said that they didn't like the room they were staying in because there was a ghost there. And they're little, so it was like one of those things like, is it your imagination? Like, is it just because that room's a little bit darker because it doesn't have as many windows? So I went back there with them, and I'm trying to like talk them through logically, like when we feel these things, let's make sure that it's not something physical first that we're picking up on. And as I'm trying to walk them through this, I picked up on it. It was a guy who I guess had maybe lived there at some point, and he was just standing in the corner. He was very grumpy, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, switching gears now. And so I told my little relative, I was like, okay, well, you just go back and hang out with everybody else. I'm gonna handle this. And I had brought some incense with me, Hey, Indigo. And so I did a smoke cleanse, and I was like, look, I know this is your house. I know when we leave, this will be your house still. But you're freaking out my little relative, and I don't appreciate that. So you can't stand in here. I'm staying in the bedroom across the hall. If you need a place to hang out while we're here, you can hang out in there. And so he moved. And that night, I felt him come up and stand next to the bed and try to be like, "Rrr." And I was like, I know it's you. And this isn't going to work. So I just rolled over and went to bed.
You know, good for you. And that was really kind of you to be like, stay in my room, because I think it would also have been okay for you to be like, can you stay in the kitchen instead? Like, can you stay in that closet over there? Can you be the closeted ghost? Just, for a little longer, Um, yeah, that's totally fair. Good for you. Like and what you're talking about too is, I think the right, if there's a right way or a great way to go about it, whether it's a child or whether it's an adult, to just be like, hey, let's see if there's a logical explanation for this. Like, is there a draft? What's going on? You rule those out. So then, when you do have an experience, it's just so much more validating, because you're like, there is no scientific, foreseeable, physical way something like this could happen. So, yeah, good for you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Hey, I just see a question. Are there questions that mediums are unable to answer? Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
a
goodness.
lot.
Uh, yeah. uh, and I think a lot of that has to do with consent.
Mhm.
Um, so it's kind of like, okay, let's say your spirit guides, for example, or even the ghost in your home sees a lot of your habits. Okay. While we're talking about ghosts, let's talk about ghosts. So let's say there's a ghost in your home and you work from home and you just spend a lot of time together, whether you're not acknowledging each other or not. And let's say, a medium rolls in and they're like, I need you to tell me, like goes to the ghost and is like, I need you to tell me the code to their safe. That ghost may be like, no, I'm not telling you the code to their safe. That's their safe. That's where they keep their stuff. Absolutely not. And then it's kind of like, could you get the answer psychically? Perhaps. Though it's important to note all those answers come from somewhere. So I think it's even more important to understand with anybody with abilities to understand where you are getting your answers from. Because you want to be sure, one, there's not a payment that you're not aware of that has something to do with what you need to do. Or you want to be sure that the answers that you're getting are actually helpful to yourself or to others. So yeah, I'd say for anybody, especially for those who have like claircognizance or like clairaudience, and you're like getting information that maybe you didn't exactly ask for, but is kind of being sent to you, to take a moment and ask yourself, like, who did this come from? Like, do I feel like somebody's in the room? Was it a spirit guide? And then ask, like, why do I need to know this? If like a spirit guide wants you to know something, or another spirit, they'll tell it to you. That it doesn't always mean like, oh, you have to pay them back for something. That I want to be clear on that. It's yeah, just know where your stuff comes from. Thanks. Wow, is that a strawberry? I don't know what that was, or a heart. I don't know. Yeah. What about the put yourself in danger with a spirit? I'm not sure if I understand that question. Um, as in like how to get in trouble with the spirit? Disrespect. I think the same way you get in trouble with a person, be like, bad words. um,
I had another question, which I know you've got some stories about. Somebody wanted to know if spirits can attach to things, not necessarily places.
yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, when you think about it, places can be like a thing.
Yeah.
So there's that. Um, with things, let me think of some examples. I've gone to thrift shops and I found people attached to their past things. And one of the things to mention here, it's not always like a full person. It's not always them like in full sentience. Sometimes it's like a piece of them that loved that and just couldn't let it go. Um, it, it's typically frowned upon by the mediumship community to be attached to something. Uh, However, I think it's important to also look at it on a case by case basis. There's an element of humanity there. Some people will go in and they're like, "You have to be severed from it. You can't be here. It is a physical thing, and you are a spirit." Okay, well, that spirit still has feelings, so maybe consider being like, "Hi, why do you like this so much?" You know, like what was it about this thing? Sometimes folks just want to talk it out, and some like I've met people who are just like, this is the last of my things. All of my things are like in a trash rubble somewhere. Like this was the only thing that I had left. And it's just like you hear them out and you're like, okay, now what? They're like, well, this is my thing. It's just like, okay, would you like a thing in spirit? And some of them don't even know that's an option. Like you talk to people who pass into spirit space or cross or whatever you want to call that, and they create entire lovely places for themselves. I call them like retirement homes. Like it's beautiful what people can create just through their imagination on the other side. And it's just kind of like, yeah, you can have that same rocking chair over there with like your friends and your family. And you can still visit if you want. You don't have to like leave forever. You can just have your own rocking chair and not have rando sit in it. Compromise. A lot of spirits just, if they are aware of what the options are, if they are aware of the things that they don't have to attach to, if they're treated humanely, a lot of them will, they'll do what they want and they'll be a lot more peaceful about it. Some things will have more residual energy attached to it. So like a feeling or like a gook or sometimes even a nice feeling attached to it. If something it witnesses enough of a particular emotion, it can have an attachment to it. So I think it's important to note here, not all attachments are sentient. Not all attachments are bad. Some attachments just are. But as far as those kinds of things, if you're going to cleanse an item, if it's a sentient being, treat them humanely. And if it's a non-sentient, just do the cleansing however you do cleansings. So do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. So recently I was at one of those paranormal conventions, and there was a guy there who had this haunted doll that he kept with him. And apparently he was very famous for this doll. I didn't know who he was. But he walked past me to go do a panel discussion, and he's carrying this doll. As he walks past me, I just got the very distinct feeling that whatever is attached to the doll does not like this at all. And I was like, oh, uh, which I can do something.
So sorry. See, here's my brain. When beings are attached to something, and let's say they want to get out, even if it's just for like a night on the town or whatever spirits do for their nights on the town. People like me, practitioners, and you don't even have to call yourself a practitioner. You can just be like somebody who has an idea and, acts on it. I've gone by some haunted things before and I've been like, hey, I can see you're angry. Do you want to be attached to that anymore? Or do you just want to like go anywhere else? So yeah, I am that person sometimes in places. Because I have a problem with that. It kind of, when things are forced to be with something against their will or where they're ready to go, but they're still like just attached to that in a way that's not consensual, that it's not consensual. And I'm just kind of like, oh, well, I'm about to relieve you of the haunting of this doll by giving them the choice and being like, go, goodbye, have fun, much love, bye. um, let's see. Ooh, okay, question. I see that. It says easy. does Rebekah have a place where her community can gather, like a Discord server or a Patreon? I do have a Patreon. Thank you so much for asking. Yeah, Patreon's where it's at. I've got an online community. And that's one of the tiers. I have a lot of different tier options. I teach courses on there. I have workshops on there, live workshops with me. I offer benefits such as my consultations, meeting me online, and we are averaging quarterly in-person meetups at this point as far
Yeah.
as the community tiers are going. And every month we have at least one social call. Sometimes we will have 2 to 3, but there's at least one social call that is hosted by the group. And it just so happens this month's social call, which is actually going to be next week, is going to be reintroduce yourself. So some people are going to be introducing themselves for the first time, and some people are going to be reintroducing themselves. But we've also, last month was show and tell. People had a bunch of weird stuff. Catherine headed that one up because I don't really have a bunch of weird stuff. I showed a rock. That was my show and tell. Other people were like bones and watches and historical things and books and like all this stuff. And I was like, this is my rock. I like it. Yes, join me on Patreon. It gets weird, in the best way. And you also have a Patreon too, right?
I do have a Patreon, and I offer free themed walks every month, and I call them walks rather than tours. Normally, my patrons will pick a theme. Last month was Savannah's Cruelest Women, and we went around certain places and we talked about some of the legends. Like, some women have this reputation for being very cruel, and then turns out they really weren't. It was just misogyny. And then some cases, women were actually that cruel. So we talked about that. We talked a little bit about some of the ghost stories attached to it. This month, I have a super secret walk coming up, and nobody knows, except for me, where I'm going. And it will be a very special thing.
Love that. Very cool. Yes, that's the thing. You have so much knowledge about Savannah. Like, walking around with you was so cool because I could literally look at almost anything and be like, what's that? And you'd be like, well, you see, in the 1700s. And I was like, excellent. I love that too, because I feel like we've had this discussion before, either in a group chat or online or somewhere, but like, the ghost tours that I enjoy the most are the ones that go to the history first. Because ghost, yes, fun, lore, love it. Though if there's not a foundation of history, I have trouble believing the lore in the first place. Because I'm just like, was that real? Like, was that just kitschy? I also, I gravitate towards tours that are telling as much of the full story as they can. So we're talking about marginalized people. We're talking about, in cities such as Wilmington and Savannah, those who were enslaved are a part of our history. And it's important, especially as a ghost tour, to not profit off of so much trauma rather than, or it would be better to not profit off of somebody's trauma, and instead to tell the history, tell the reality, because oftentimes the reality is a horror story in itself. And for any spirits that may be around, to tell those stories respectfully so that they're not, all gore and all of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. And it is a fine line to balance it because, yeah, slavery was awful. And there were a whole bunch of people who were treated terribly. And it is important to acknowledge that, to acknowledge how awful slavery was. But at the same time, you kind of have to walk this careful line where it's not turning into like torture porn. And yeah, I personally, and I'm still learning, I'm trying to balance that out with true stories of like triumph, like talking about Susie King Taylor, who was an enslaved woman who escaped during the Civil War, and then came back to Savannah and opened up a school for African American children. I talk about Mother Matilda Beasley, who was the first black nun in Georgia. Uh, and I also talk about the unmarked burial ground in the square formerly known as Calhoun Square, and why it's so important that that area gets renamed for somebody who actually deserves to be remembered.
Yeah. I would do this same thing when I'm regular in-person tours. Which, by the way, for any of you who didn't pick up on that, I stopped doing in-person tours in 2021, and I started making content instead, so I could share with more people. But I also do exclusive ghost tours. Or ghost things on Patreon. The full things are there, and then like the clipped versions are going to be on YouTube. But yeah, I would talk about people who had overcome their situations. It's not, I don't think, I think a ghost could also be the imprint of tragedy that happens to a town. I don't think you always have to talk about, a specific person who's still hanging around in order for the imprint to still be felt. Like out here, we have the coup d'etat of 1898. And I talk about this all the time. If you have not learned about the coup d'etat of 1898, please look it up. They're teaching it not in schools, but they're talking about it now, which is important. It's the only successful overthrow of government in United States history. And it was because race. So do look that up. And here's the thing, when we talk about imprints, there is an imprint of that energy here around November every year. It feels heavy because spiritually speaking, whether that's an individual or just the spirit of Wilmington itself, remembers and has remembered for a long time. And unfortunately, our city did not remember or tried to cover it up. So now people are talking about it again, and at least that's a way for us to be like, hey, you've remembered, we remember too. And that's how healing starts, along with a lot of other action. I got a question. Have you ever had a spirit say, no, that's not exactly how it happened? Yes. That's in part why I don't do those ghost tours anymore, because the history wasn't accurate and I had problems with that. George, who, if you see my Ghost Gets One playlist, he was the one to reach out. I didn't realize what I was doing was a psychic thing. I just knew the story that I was told to tell with the tour. And then I had this conflicting story that would show up in my head. I was getting visuals, I was getting thoughts, I was getting all kinds of stuff. And so over time, my story started to change a little bit. And not so much that it conflicted with the tour, but like, instead of it being a love story between a man and a woman, it became more about a man who was a clerk and like all these things. And I would say these things in tour and I'd be like, where did I get that information from? It wasn't on the tour. I didn't do the research for this. I did it later. But like, I was like, what? Huh? I'm confused. It's like something is going on. It took a random medium, which I'm grateful for her to this day, because it's because of her that I actually started up a conversation and actually trusted my abilities, because it was her coming up to me and she was like, hey, the guy over there. And I was like, what guy? And she's like, the ghost. And I'm like, the real ghost? The one over there? That one right there. She's just like, yeah, he likes the way you tell your stories. And I was just like, and here's the thing, for some of you who have been watching my life for a little while, you're gonna be like, wait, George is a bad guy. Yes. Here's the thing, I am able, now that I've dealt with what has happened and I've learned a lot from it, yeah, he was a bad guy. All the same, without him being around, without him having pinged that one medium, without him having given me new stories or the story of his life rather than what was being told, has no historical backing, I found later. It was just a love story of tragedy that may have happened, but we don't have proof of it. Yeah, without that, what would this channel be? Yeah. There would be no ghost skits. There might be a few, but yeah. So hindsight, all that cool stuff. What about you? Have you ever experienced something where you were telling a story or you talked to other people who are not cool with the stories or something to that extent?
Not quite exactly. There's something that I'm still trying to research, and one of my moderators here is going to know exactly what I'm talking about because we were walking through Lafayette Square one night, and she and several other people we were with felt pain. They, yeah, and there's Alice. They got attacked essentially. They started feeling some of the things that had been felt in that area before. And that area used to have a jail there. So they would have to tell you about it because they're the ones who experienced it. But from what I'm remembering, and Indigo, correct me if I'm wrong, they all felt like they were in pain, like they had been attacked. I don't know whether it was that they were feeling the same things, that the spirits were like, this is what I felt, this is what you're going to feel too, or if they were actually being attacked. And then as we're sitting and they're trying to catch their breath, one of them looks up in the trees and said, did they hang people here? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, there was a jail here, so maybe. So I'm still researching that because they saw people in the trees, and I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't prepared for this. We're gonna go.
Um, that seems to be a very Savannah thing. Which, and on the YouTube video, I appreciated your acknowledgement, correction, if you will, on some of the things that I was reading, because I feel like it could be that assumption where people come into town, they're like, everybody's been hanged here, all the streets, all people are hanging all the time, like, but it does happen though. Like
The
there's,
trees look super spooky, so
like, you know when it's real when somebody's like, I think they hang people, and then you know when it's real when somebody's like, can we leave? Can we leave now? Can we go? Can we go? Because I want to go. Like, I don't feel good. Goodbye. No. um, I got a question. Do spirits stay around if you have their ashes? Just a quick answer to that, because I've seen it a few times. Only if the spirit still has an attachment to their mortal form. They don't have to. So long as you're not asking too much and they're not expecting too much and they're able to do what they need to do and you're able to do what you need to do. No, otherwise we would have all the haunted, places where they keep ashes. They're places that they, what am I thinking of? The
urns.
well, like not just the urns, but like mausoleums or like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
10
Dang
points to
it.
anybody who comments what in the world I'm thinking right now. Crematorium. Wait, is that what that's?
No, that's where they cremate them.
Dang it. Mortuary. No, that's also.
No.
This is the live where I yell out words.
I know the word.
Mausoleum. Yeah, I think I said that. I think my makeup's done with me today. So if it looks like I'm crying, I promise I'm okay. It's just like, it's that time of day, folks. Mausoleum. That seems correct. Okay, crypt is another one. I'm gonna get a tissue real quick. This happens sometimes.
So fun fact, well, Rebecca's run off.
People. Okay.
Columbarium.
What was that?
Columbarium.
Columbarium. I literally just saw that as you said it. Thank you, Dahlia. You win. You win
Thank
the
you,
10
Dr.
points.
Proving a point.
I've been brought to tears over this subject.
So one of my moderators, Indigo, reminded me of another thing that their spouse experienced in the same area on the same night. We were walking by St. John's Cathedral, and their spouse looked up, gasped, and like ran off. And Indigo went to go follow them, and I'm standing there with the other friend, like, what's going on? Do we need to go follow them? And she was like, no, this happens sometimes. And I was like, I don't know what that means. We're just going to stay here though. And then Indigo and their spouse came back, and their spouse had seen somebody falling from one of the bell towers, and he disappeared right before he hit the ground. Uh, and they said, I hate when they show me how they die. And I was like, oh, fun.
Now, have you seen, I know CBS has a version of it, but I've seen more of the BBC version of Ghost, the TV show.
Mhm.
Okay, the one woman who falls out of the window every night.
Yes.
Like she just walks off. She's just like, I love that. um, cool. Yeah. Somebody asked if I do readings. I do all of my readings from afar. I do that online, and I call them consultations. I have a variety of services that I offer online. Anything from consultations to basic psychic reads to energy cleansings to talking to ghosts. Talking to ghosts is one of my favorite things to do. I'm happy to do that for folks, and one of the things I call them consultations because I don't just do readings in them. I work with people on an individual basis to help them learn and grow how they can strengthen their communication, their trust in themselves on a spiritual nature. So that, I just think everybody, the more people who are aware of themselves, the better off we are as a society, for a lot of different reasons. So I never want to gatekeep my process. And that's why I work with people to not just offer readings, but also work with them to grow their skills as they like, as they are comfortable doing. But I also have courses on that. What's that?
And you have a team.
I do have a team. Thank you for mentioning my team. Some of my team members are my mods tonight. Thank you so much. Yeah, goodness. Catherine has now started doing past loved ones readings, as well as working on a psychic level for spirit guides. Sorsha heads up Dee Dee readings. Krista is our emotion coder, and Patty is new. She is, or at least new to us. She is our Akashic Records reader. So that's the whole thing of the team. I don't do everything. I don't specialize in everything, but other people do, and we can all support each other. So that's that. I think if I had a team for tour guides, I'd be asking you, but that would be kind of weird. But
Well, speaking of which, there is a tour company that's based out of Savannah that does what I do, minus the ghost stories. They specialize in dark history, and I read that they just opened up a tour company in Wilmington doing the same thing.
are they the one they have like nightly ones?
I think so.
Or no, that is another ghost tour. There's a ghost tour. They have like a bunch of locations that just opened up here. I haven't been on one yet. Um,
This is
uh,
their second location.
okay.
They've just been doing Savannah.
Ooh, okay. Um, cool. I love tours, and I'd be interested to see if I could learn things because, like you, I know a lot of stuff down here.
But the owner said that they reached out to like historians in the area to become tour guides, um, and to help like write the script and everything, because he wanted to make sure that they got accurate history and not just hearsay and legends.
See, you want to win Wilmingtonians over, you talk to our historians because we've got some. I love that. Very cool. I will have to check that out. By the way, at some point, I extend the offer to you as I have done before. Do come visit. We will have more collaborations. And I get to show you around my town and do the thing that you did in Savannah, where I can be like, that's a that, and this is a this, and that person works there, and that person's dead, and that what. It's like you want to talk to the like not live person here, or do you want to talk about the live person, or do you want to talk to the live person talking about the unalived person? Wilmington, like Savannah, it's like downtown. If you don't believe in ghosts at this point, you just haven't been paying attention. That's it.
Um, so you and Catherine are now a part of my tours. Uh, Partially because I do talk about Mr. Hot Stuff in Chippewa Square. But also, if I take my tour group past the old Pink House, I tell them about Rupert uh, figuring out that one of the previous owners was there. And I was like, yes, yes, he is here.
Yeah, goodness. Yeah, what cuz he and Arnold's kind of went off with him for a little bit, right? Like we were having our conversation and I remember I was poking fun because I was just like, "Do we ask him to give you a ghostly experience?" And you're like, "No. No."
I'm good.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a good time. All things to do again. I'll have to at some point get more material. You can be a part of a ghost skit. You can be a part of one of the official Rebecca the Ghost Guide ghost skits.
Yay. I'll be famous.
Oh yeah, you already are famous, I think. Well, I've got to pop off, but if you would please, again, I'm going to be tagging you on YouTube for when I repost this recording. I repost all of my recordings on YouTube. But how do people find you?
I'm on TikTok, obviously, Saltwave Spanish Moss. And in my bio, I've got a link tree that has links to my Instagram, my YouTube, my Patreon, and my website. So if you're ever in Savannah and you would like a history tour or a ghost tour, reach out to me.
Or maybe both, do a double
Yeah.
booking. Be like, yo, we want to see you in the afternoon. We want to get dinner, maybe treat you to dinner and then be like, okay, we're going to go see some ghosts next. Yeah. Cool, cool. And for anybody wondering who in the world I am, you can find me at RebekahTheGhostGuide.com. That's also where my readers team is. That's where my consultations are. That's where you can find information on my courses, on my workshops, my Patreon, etc., etc., etc. We all know who I go to for tours in Savannah now. It should not be a surprise. But if you are in Savannah, if you are in the area, if you want to treat yourself to a vacay, now's the time to do it. Book with Enica because just so much knowledge. I love like all the things that you offer. So cool, cool. Well, thanks for asking me to go live with you. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, you take care, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Patreons. Thank you, my moderators. And I'm gonna give another shout out to Hermes. He knows what he's done. So all good things. All right. Take care.
All right, see you later.
See ya. Bye.